After gently pouring into Du-jun's glass, Du-jun comfortably lifted his glass and drank it as if he was drinking barley-flavored water. After finishing it in one gulp, it seemed like he often drank barley at home. Once done, Du-jun also grabbed the bottle of alcohol on the table. An elder cousin complimented, "You have quite the alcohol tolerance, huh? You even know the etiquette at the drinking table." Then, as Du-jun was pouring, he said, "I have something to ask you. Do you think I should become an auditor or a lawyer? Which would benefit you more?" The elder cousin didn't understand why Du-jun asked that. Du-jun, on the other hand, was scheming. Even if the elder cousin thought hard about it, he'd realize Du-jun was just pretending to act mature. The cousin then began to drink, finishing the barley smoothie in one gulp. After that, he said, "Next to grandfather, there's Lee Hat-chae. By my father's side, there are also two people close like Lee Hat-chae." He placed the empty glass down and continued, "But they're just outsiders. Though we're cousins, we still have to be united." Du-jun, puzzled, asked, "Cousins?" The cousin, trying to be friendly, replied, "Exactly," and then lifted his beer bottle. While Du-jun was still confused, the cousin continued, "During my time in Europe, no matter how much loyalty my subordinates showed, the reality was different." He smirked maliciously, "Everyone has their calculations." At that moment, Du-jun felt like laughing. He tried to act as if he wasn't that type of person but blamed others for his distrustful nature. The elder cousin continued, "Understand this, the distance between the one who gives money and the one who receives is vast. But with siblings, it's different. We don't exchange money for food, we share the sweet and the bitter." Holding his alcohol, Du-jun couldn't help but laugh. He thought, if this were the old Jin Du-jun, maybe he'd believe those words, but not me. "I know you imprisoned your own brother, Shin Young-chun, because you didn't want to share assets." The cousin responded, "Do you not know what's best for me? Honestly, I don't care if you pass your exam or become a lawyer." Du-jun asked, "Why don't you care?" The cousin pretended to be nice and said, "Whatever you do, I'll be by your side. I'll help you become the second in command of the company." Hearing this, Du-jun chuckled, "Among all our relatives, I only trust you. The others are useless. Even if they grow up, they can't manage a company. I need a smart man like you by my side." Du-jun wondered if this guy saw him as competition or wanted him as a right-hand man. Suddenly, there was a shout, "Brother!" Du-jun sat innocently, and two scantily clad women entered, greeting everyone. The elder cousin responded, "Oh, you're here." Du-jun recognized these women from movies and music shows. One of the women, Taomai, exclaimed upon seeing Du-jun, "Oh my, it's my first time seeing him." Du-jun suddenly stood up, surprising everyone. When asked where he was going, he replied, "I mentioned earlier that I was feeling tired, so I'll be leaving first." The elder cousin didn't stop him, "All right, I'll call you later." The cousin watched with a calculating gaze as Du-jun left. Du-jun quickly left the room, loosening his tie and taking a deep breath. "I held my breath for so long inside." He thought about how this was the first time he drank alcohol in this body and was glad to get some fresh air. The chauffeur was still waiting in the car. Du-jun approached, noticing the man had fallen asleep with scratches on his face from a recent fight. Du-jun felt sympathy, realizing how hard life could be. He went to the other side, opened the door, and got in. The chauffeur apologized for falling asleep, but Du-jun apologized for making him wait so long. The man replied, "It's okay." Du-jun said, "Please don't say that. Just sit in the back seat and relax." However, Du-jun remarked, "Do you think I'm some rich kid or an official sitting in the back? Just driving, I feel awkward." Hearing Du-jun's words surprised the driver. But he simply nodded and focused on driving. The car slowly moved out of the house and sped onto the empty highway at night. The driver politely asked Du-jun if he wanted to listen to the radio, but Du Jun declined. Du Jun then questioned why the driver addressed him as a young master, which made him feel uneasy. The driver looked confused, unsure of how to respond. Du Jun further inquired, "You work in the strategy department, right?" The driver was taken aback, wondering how Du Jun knew this. Du Jun explained, "I often chat with my grandfather, so I know." The planning department is divided into two sections. One section consists of top graduates from prestigious universities who plan for the entire conglomerate, and the other comprises graduates from lesser-known universities. They clean up the messes that people in my family cause. Upon hearing this, the driver started sweating profusely and his hands trembled, affecting his driving. Du Jun continued, "I guess you belong to the latter group, right? Just like my past life." At this, the veins in the driver's hands bulged and his face displayed an indescribable anger. Understanding the humiliation and contempt, Du Jun added, "You are luckier than the top university graduates." The driver was perplexed, unsure of how he was luckier. Du Jun continued, "Think about the chairman's age. He's nearing 80 and won't live much longer. When he passes away, my 3 uncles and an aunt will likely take over. Sun Yan, the vice chairman, will surely monopolize the conglomerates." The driver wondered why the young man was sharing this information with him. Unperturbed, Du Jun said, "When the time comes, the secrets you know about this family can be sold for an astronomical price. The amount you can get is more than what those from prestigious universities working in sales will earn in their lifetimes." Suddenly, the driver yelled at Du Jun, demanding to know who he was and what he wanted. Du Jun, now furious, warned, "Don't be disrespectful to me. I'm getting annoyed." The driver turned pale and fell silent. Du Jun instructed, "I'm a bit tired and want a nap. Wake me up when we get home." The driver was infuriated by Du Jun's commanding tone but drove him home. In 1991, the Handa Steel conglomerate, which once built a steel plant in Dang Trin on the western coast, collapsed. Once ranked 9th in credit management, 14th in asset management, and owning 22 subsidiaries nationwide, it vanished quickly. Many banks and over 70 financial institutions faced peril. This year, the predators bore deep wounds. From now, the battle amongst them would begin. In Chairman Jin Yangdan's office, he mentioned a figure of 2.37 trillion won and asked if it was accurate. The room fell silent. The chairman, irate, demanded an answer. The vice chairman finally confirmed the accuracy. The chairman mused, "If Handu is worth this, then Dahyun will bid at 2.37 trillion won. Given Dahyun's existing steel production technology, how much should we bid?" The room remained silent. The chairman specifically asked Jin Young Chung his opinion. Jin Young Chung quickly proposed 1.8 trillion won. When asked why, he explained it was the maximum Sun Yan could afford at that moment. The chairman was not pleased, pointing out they'd lose to Dahyun at that rate. Others in the room argued against borrowing more money, asserting the value of the asset equaled their bid. The chairman argued that public auctions obviously involve outbidding each other. Young Chung highlighted that when acquiring Handu, Sun Yan should demonstrate the best overall efficiency. Since Dahyun already had steel production technology, their efficiency would decrease. The vice chairman frowned but remained silent. The chairman immediately said, "We have to write a report that shows the comprehensive strength of Sun Yan, just like what Director Jin said. It has to be perfect enough to move the evaluation board." Then he ordered the people here to prepare it in a week and asked again, "Anyone else? Only one opinion of 1.8 trillion won? Anyone else have a different opinion?" At that time, someone bravely said the price of 2.5 trillion won. The father and son of the vice chairman were stunned. Everyone in the room was also silent as paper, not daring to speak up. The chairman asked the person who just gave the price for his argument. That person was the director of a construction company that was a branch of Sun Yan Group. He quickly answered about the bonds. Daehyun and Sunyan had no difference, so Handu could go to either group. He thought we should split the money higher to avoid rumors about fairness in this matter. The father and son of the vice chairman frowned when they heard this. The chairman asked again how to get the money for the remaining amount. The branch director answered that the construction company of Sunyang currently had a land plot to build an apartment. If they mortgaged the land, they could borrow 700 million won. The chairman frowned and asked, "Where do we get the money to pay off the rest of that debt? We can't sell the apartment that was built on that land." The branch director answered, "The construction company will handle this matter neatly. The chairman doesn't need to worry too much." The chairman was happy, thinking that this was the most satisfactory answer. It solved the problem that could easily occur and shortened the process. If he happened to break the law or bend the rules, he would be the only one responsible and not implicate us. We also didn't have to lie that we didn't know anything because that was the truth. Thinking so, but the chairman still asked Director Hong, "You seem very busy when you get a lot of money, huh? 700 million won is not the name of a neighbor's dog that you can confidently say it's yours." The director was scared and waved his hands. "Chairman, what are you saying?" On the other side, the vice chairman was also planning something. The next day at the chairman's mansion, the secretary was reporting, as predicted, Daehyun offered a price of 2.3 trillion won. The chairman smiled smugly, "That's Daehyun for you. Chairman Chu is not someone who likes to play tricks, right?" The secretary asked, "Do you really want to invest 2.5 trillion won? Why don't you want to?" The chairman asked back. The secretary answered, "If we do that, the capital and operation of the group will become tight for a long time." The chairman looked at Do-jun and asked with a smile, "What do you think, Do-jun? Is there really no other way than using money?" The chairman added and then fell silent, waiting for a suitable answer from Do-jun. Do-jun smiled knowingly, knowing that this grandfather had a dark mind as clear as day but still pretended. But he still pretended to ask, "Can you give me a hint?" The chairman hinted, "Even if you sell a branch of a tree, you have to sell it to someone who intends to plant and grow it. Who wants to sell it to someone who intends to take it home and use it as firewood?" Do-jun was speechless when he heard that. The secretary understood and quickly asked the chairman, "Do you mean Daehyun is going to sell Handu again?" The chairman chuckled, "Chairman Chu of Daehyun has nothing to do with this. You just need to think from the perspective of someone who grows and sells trees." The secretary breathed a sigh of relief at this point. The chairman asked Do-jun again, "Is this hint enough?" Do-jun respectfully said yes and then continued, "If Daehyun buys it back, they will build an apartment on Handu's land and sell them. And the equipment and the steel plant will be sold abroad. That way, Handu Steel Group will completely disappear without a trace. But Sunyan Group just entered the steel field, so they will try their best to normalize Handu Group. We have to make others see this." The chairman smiled proudly, "It seems like I gave too many hints." Do-jun wondered if this would work or not. Daehyun also had a strong network of relationships. Even if their purpose was to sell Handu, there would still be many supporters. Do-jun pretended to ask, "How much do you think we need to buy back Handu, grandfather?" The chairman was startled because his grandson suddenly asked him the opposite. He laughed and said, 1 trillion won plus $1 billion, because there is no more even if you want more. The secretary hurriedly advised the chairman that the gap of 500 billion won was too big. He said, "Find a nice bait and you will throw the hook yourself." Do-jun heard and guessed that the media was the tool to get the best bait. It was the media, so he had to make a noise for the press and television to say that they must save the steel industry, the backbone of the domestic industry. That way, the pressure could put pressure on the evaluation side. But that selfish old man, Do-jun asked himself, wasn't 500 billion a bit dangerous? At that time, in his head appeared the image of the chairman like an old fox saying, "You open your eyes and look carefully at how to solve it." See how I use those employees that I have fed and nurtured for decades? Do-jun seemed to understand the plan of the old man. At that time, the chairman remembered to ask Do-jun, tomorrow is the opening ceremony, right? I have left my phone number for the principal and the dean. You should go to school and invite them for a drink once in a while. They will help you when you have difficulties. Do-jun obediently followed his words. At that time, the chairman said again, there is a guy who will help you with some chores. He is waiting outside. I have chosen a smart guy who is trustworthy. Do-jun pretended to be happy and thanked his grandfather. Then Do-jun left the chairman's study. He went out and was surprised to see the person standing in front of him. A tall man bowed and greeted Do-jun. He introduced himself as Kim Chun-suc, an assistant of the strategy department, and hoped to be helped by Do-jun. Do-jun took his business card and politely greeted him. Then he invited Do-jun to get in the car to take him home. Do-jun thought for a moment as he saw this person serving him on the highway. The luxury car ran smoothly without any obstacles. Do-jun looked out of the car window with sadness. Then he called out, "Assistant Kim." He answered back. He asked again, "Who arranged for you to assist me? Is it the vice chairman?" Assistant Kim answered, "No, it's Director Lee Hat-chae." Do-jun searched his memory for the name Director Lee. After a while, he remembered who Lee Hat-chae was. He was his grandfather's assistant, a familiar name who always stayed by his grandfather's side until the last minute. If so, he was worth trusting. Do-jun asked again, "Who do you have to report to?" "The director of strategy." Assistant Kim was startled and confused. Do-jun said, "Don't you come to monitor my every move? It's clear as day and you're still surprised." He quickly said, "I'm sorry, I've never heard that question before." Director Lee said I don't have to report directly to him. Is there anything I need to pay attention to? Do-jun looked at this new assistant and thought sympathetically that he was also kind-hearted. After all, he had to report everything. So Do-jun relaxed and said, "It's okay, you just report the truth. Monitoring me is your job as Assistant Kim. Director Lee is your superior, so you have to listen to him." Assistant Kim was stunned by this situation and didn't know what to say. On the ride home with Assistant Kim, Do-jun was sure that he would know how to choose. The next day at Do-jun's house, it was still the voice of Mr. Seoul. He said, "We should stop before they buy Handu. Handu is not something for us to play with. If you buy Handu, you won't be able to continue running the business. You will just split it up and sell it anyway. It's a waste of time. The bidding is coming soon and it will take about a year to find a place to sell it back, and we're not even sure if we can sell it back." Do-jun spoke up, "I don't really want to buy Handu, I just want to join the bidding." Si-hoon frowned and asked, "What are you up to? You know this is a showdown between Sun-yen and Dae-hyun, right?" Hearing this, Do-jun just sneered. He said to Si-hoon, "I want to help you out. Sun-yen must get Handu." Si-hoon was always shocked by this guy's words. He sighed and said, "If the major shareholder wants it, then an employee like you has to follow along. You don't have a choice." The next day, the TV started broadcasting the news that Fantasy, a company with investment from the US, had jumped into the battle to buy Handu. They showed confidence by revealing the amount of money they offered, 2.5 trillion won. Let's hear from the CEO of Fantasy. At this point on TV, Si-hoon started to speak. Many businesses have been born and disappeared into the Handu group. Handu is one of them. We don't have an obligation to keep it forever. We understand the clear value of Handu and are confident that we can buy it back. A reporter asked, "If you become the buyer of Handu, what are your plans?" He said, "We are investors, not businessmen. The steel plant will be transferred to whoever wants it, and the land of Handu will be sold back to a construction company." The reporter asked again, "Do you mean that money will be your capital?" Si-hoon replied, "Speculation sounds unpleasant, The important thing is that the bank that lent money to Handu has to choose the investor who offers the highest amount of money. They have to reduce bad debts or the bank could be in danger. Then he turned off the TV angrily. At this time, the chairman's secretary and Si-hoon were sitting together in a room. The secretary said first, "You're not just messing around for fun, but you're also dragging the acquisition into this?" "Why?" Si-hoon answered, "Is that why you called me here early in the morning when I'm busy?" The secretary heard the word that and got angry. He pointed at Si-hoon and yelled, "Do you know who you're annoying with your careless attitude?" He remembered that before, the chairman had been so angry that he broke the remote. The chairman had said, "Bring that guy here right now. How dare he meddle in our prepared meal?" Si-hoon just smiled politely and got up. He said, "You should watch the interview again and think about how my nephew has helped your boss." The vice chairman was confused. Si-hoon said more, "Sun-yen is the beneficiary here. Even though they will spend more money, they will surely persuade the review board more easily." The secretary was more puzzled as he listened. Si-hoon got up and said, "I'm busy so I'll excuse myself first. I have to meet with the lender." The secretary then realized something. He thought, the nephew was Do-jun? He said Do-jun is helping the chairman? Then he understood what was going on. From Sun-yan's perspective, Fantasy Monster was an unexpected competitor that appeared. But if the intruder was Si-hoon, who knew the chairman's intentions well, then in the early stage he would play the role of bleeding public opinion. He would follow the direction that Sun-yan wanted. The chairman sighed in relief and thought that he finally got some peace. Then he leaned back on the sofa and muttered, "Suddenly it became a triangle relationship with no head or tail, right?" At this time, his phone rang. He answered the phone and found out that it was the chairman. The chairman said, "Ha-che is not just angry for nothing. It might become a good fuel for us." The secretary told the chairman that he had just talked to Si-hoon and his intention was to become bait for us. The chairman was surprised and asked, "Did he say that himself?" The secretary respectfully replied, "Yes, he said that this was a joint product between him and Do-jun to help the chairman." The chairman was very surprised and said, "What? Do-jun came out to help me?" When he heard the secretary confirm that, the chairman laughed loudly. Then he laughed even louder and felt very happy. He thought to himself, "The useless children of mine are all busy doing everything to get my money. But my nephew mobilized the investors from America to help me." The secretary continued to report, "Tomorrow I will release a series of articles criticizing fantasy. We have to use provocative words like corporate hunters who only think about money, risk of capital speculation, escape from national assets. The chairman has asked you already, what else?" The secretary said that I think we should send our people to the discussion program of each TV station with 5 or 6 economic professors to emphasize that issue. The chairman asked, "Did you mention Da-hyun's name?" The secretary said, "Yes, Da-hyun already has enough steel plants. His purchase of Handu can only be because he wants their land. His real goal is to build apartments for sale. Just throw a stone at that door and the lake will be stirred up." The secretary reported with confidence. On the other side of the phone, the chairman agreed and said happily, "It was not good to expose Da-hyun from the beginning, but Si-hoon opened up and gave us a chance." The next day at S University, the campus was always crowded with people. They were all smart students from rich families. Do-jun casually put his hands in his pockets and walked to school without carrying anything. Do-jun walked step by step to the auditorium of S University in his expensive shoes. Inside the auditorium, the students were sleeping or eating hot pot in the sunny weather like a fire mountain. The auditorium was noisy and full of students and food. Suddenly, everyone looked at the door. Do-jun confidently walked in like Kotex without fearing anyone with his rich kid aura. He walked over and sat down on the only empty seat on the table with a steaming pot of lobster and crab soup, beer and wine everywhere. He couldn't believe this was a university. Do-jun thought to himself, if I only had the memory of being the third-generation heir of a wealthy family, how would I react when I came here? Maybe I would sit down with a dumbfounded face. At this time, an old man holding a microphone came out and greeted everyone. He said he was a student from class 95. After his introduction and greetings from some teachers, the new students began to stand up and introduce themselves. The first one was a country bumpkin who said, "Hello everyone, I am from the village over there." Next was a guy who looked like a ghost and said, "I will uphold the future law of the country." And then there were students who introduced themselves from Jeju Island. Do-jun understood that this was still a beautiful time. Most of the new students were from other provinces. This was not a society where rich kids from Gangnam lived. Seoul monopolizes the prestigious schools, but it is still a time when the times create heroes. A student at a local high school can achieve good results and enter a famous university. Do-jun was secretly thinking that the current society was still an equal society, when a microphone was brought to his face. The lady with glasses sitting next to him pushed the microphone into Do-jun's face and said, "Here." Do-jun had to reluctantly hold the microphone and stand up to prepare for the introduction. At this time, everyone looked at him. The guys who were drinking also looked over. Do-jun modestly asked his senior, "Can I speak a little longer?" The senior said, "Sure, go ahead." Do-jun bowed his head and thanked the senior. Then he began to speak. "Maybe many of you already know me. I am Do-jun, who is very lucky to have a grandfather who is a tycoon. That's why I can easily stand here." At this point, some people smiled and some did not show any emotion. Everyone knew that this was not a place where you could get in just by having a lot of money. Do-jun continued modestly and politely, "I want to make friends with my peers and seniors, but I guess it won't be easy. So I want to show my skills to you, seniors. If I give gifts to my friends and seniors, will it be considered bribery?" The senior replied, "No, it's not. The crime of bribery depends on whether there is money or not. In this case, the money that you intend to give to your friends and seniors is only an intangible amount that represents friendship." Do-jun smiled and said, "I see. What if I give expensive gifts to the teachers? Will it be considered bribery?" At this point, the teacher finally laughed out loud. "Unfortunately, yes. The teacher's weapon is the score, and the score is not an abstract thing." Do-jun sighed in relief and said, "That's good." At this point, a loud noise rang out, distracting everyone. They all saw people dressed in black pushing a lot of boxes into the hall, making everyone excited because they were about to receive gifts. Who wouldn't like that? Do-jun continued, "Actually, my skill is learned from my grandfather, to win people's hearts with gifts and always prepare gifts that are more valuable than expected." At this point, the staff gave each student a box of something that made them stunned and open-mouthed. Do-jun said again, "Your gift is the laptop that Sun-yen plans to launch next month. It belongs to the premium line equipped with Intel chip, super large RAM capacity and hard drive capacity." Then Do-jun continued to talk about the configuration of the machine, but saw that no one bothered to listen. He got annoyed and threw down the microphone without saying anything else. Do-jun thought to himself that they only cared about looking at the laptop and no one bothered to listen to his explanation. A few days ago, in the chairman's study room, he was shocked when Do-jun asked for 200 new laptops. "Do you know how much money 200 laptops are?" Do-jun answered that each one cost about 3 million won, so that would be about 600 million won in total. The grandfather angrily asked, "And you want to share them with them just to please them?" But Do-jun calmly said that it was both pleasing and making them follow his side, and also promoting at the same time. Do-jun added more. The chairman was surprised. Promoting? He didn't understand what promotion meant. But Do-jun was very wise. The laptop was used by students of S school, where the best talents of Korea gathered, and they took it everywhere. That would create a buzz in the school, right? That would make everyone see that our laptop was not only for working people but also for students. The chairman shook his head. It was hard to promote with just that method. After all, it was only on a school scale. And Jun said again, there had to be a follow-up blow. The chairman was bewildered and did not understand the meaning of the next sentence that his grandson said. Jun continued, because we released late, we missed the beginning of the new semester, so we have to create programs like special discounts for students, academic events, and take photos with S University as the background. Hearing this, the chairman was still a bit hesitant and thoughtful. Jun added another sentence, if you regret it, I will use my money. You know that 600 million won is just pocket money for me. The chairman was angry and said, this guy makes me look like a cheapskate. Jun was silent this time and did not say anything. The chairman asked further, but why only 200 machines? According to what I know, there are about 400 students in the thesis class. Jun politely answered, I heard that only half of the students will attend the welcome party for new students. Only those who attend will get a share. At this point, the chairman wondered and asked his grandson why it was like that. Jun heard his grandfather ask and did not answer but just laughed loudly. Then he replied, the difference between those who participate and those who do not cannot be the same. I will let them know that only those who follow me will get the reward. Hearing this, the chairman was happy and slapped his thigh with a loud sound that hurt but still pretended to say, exactly. If you want to lure them, you have to use a strategy of both hitting and caressing. Then he laughed loudly with great pleasure. Jun knew he had flattered his grandfather, so he also smiled and did not say anything more. At this time, in the cafeteria of the university, everyone was buzzing with the new laptop in their hands. Some people even said to the laptop, today I will hug this machine to sleep. Others gathered to see the configuration of the machine and rejoiced because they suddenly got a gift from heaven. Jun looked at this scene and felt very satisfied because this was his purpose. Suddenly a paper was handed to him in front of his face. It was Kim Trat Lai. He handed him the paper and respectfully called him young master. Jun took the paper and slowly looked at the information inside. It turned out that these people refused it. He thought to himself that he would pay more attention to them in the future. A few days later, the atmosphere at school had changed completely. Of course not because of the spring weather in April. On the road from the school gate to the lecture hall, Jun greeted quite a few friends and seniors. He also had a few people walking with him to the lecture hall. He entered the class with a superstar attitude. At this time someone called Jun, making him a little bewildered. His friend said, this laptop distracts me so much. Lately I just dream of hugging it and playing all day without studying anything. Hearing his friend say that, Jun just smiled politely and asked, really? Then he also sat down. Jun joked that this was his real purpose, to give toys to his opponents so that they would neglect their studies. A friend replied that he didn't need to give them then, making everyone around look askance. At this time there were some people standing outside talking. They were looking at Jun. Jun glanced over and noticed them and also his friend sitting alone on top. Jun thought to himself, these people didn't get laptops but they hate me so much. Should I give them one more at the May festival? Then in the hallway at the university someone was making himself a delicious cup of coffee. Jun looked behind him and slowly approached him. He quietly stood on one side and observed what this guy with glasses was doing. Jun looked at him and thought to himself, he is one of those who refused to accept the laptop. I wonder what motivation helped him resist the temptation of 6 million dong, which is twice the starting salary for new graduates at Daehoon. At this time, Daehoon put a coin into the vending machine to imitate buying coffee because he had been thirsty for a while. Then Jun said to the glasses guy, I heard you didn't take the laptop. That surprised me. Suddenly, the glasses guy got angry and cursed, do you want me to grab that thing and thank you? Jun still calmly replied, I don't have that kind of thought. I just said it casually. The middle guy thought to himself, I thought he was going to say something special. It turns out it's because of his pride. The glasses guy suddenly went crazy and yelled, you don't need to show off. I know you are the third generation of a wealthy family. So now you use money to lure college friends? Jun asked the glasses guy back, if your senior buys you a meal for 1,500 dong at the cafeteria, will you also refuse because it's showing off money? Jun asked again, is buying a cup of coffee for 100 dong at the vending machine also like that? The glasses guy got angrier and couldn't control himself. He shouted at Jun's mouth, how can you compare those things with a laptop? But Jun still calmly said they were the same, making the glasses guy stunned and shocked. Jun thought to himself, looking at this kid, he's cute like that friend Hong. It's true. This is the time to protect his own pride. Because as soon as he steps out into society and sees this and that collapse, he will realize that pride is something that holds him back. The glasses guy got even more angry and yelled at Jun's face, what nonsense are you talking about? Jun answered, for me, those things are the same. They don't count by units, hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands. I only know hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions, or hundreds of billions. Anything below 100 million is changed. So for me, there is no difference between a laptop or coffee. Jun boasted arrogantly. He knew it sounded harsh, but he had to do it so that this guy wouldn't dare to mess with him again. When your senior buys you a meal in the cafeteria, you will thank him and accept it, right? If you drop 100 dong on the street, you will also bend down and pick it up right away. Your pride disappears at times like that. But when you find 3 million dong at a student club, your pride suddenly rises up. Oh, Jun asked the glasses guy and then added another sentence, if that's what you call pride, then it's really useless. After saying that, Jun performed a beautiful act of throwing the coffee cup he had just finished drinking into the trash can for the glasses guy to see and then turned around and left him alone. He didn't understand what had just happened outside the school right now with warm light everywhere. The students were playing with each other happily. Some people saw groups of 5 or 7 and probably guessed they were talking bad about some rich kid. Jun was having a conversation with his college friend. Then this person got up and left, leaving only Jun alone. He thought disappointedly that most of the others reacted similarly and there was nothing to expect from them. At this time, suddenly there was a voice calling out, Jin Jun. A tall guy dressed in hip-hop came over and said that his senior said that action was not bribery but actually bribery. Dushin remembered that this kid also refused to take the laptop. He asked the hip-hop kid, why is it bribery? The hip-hop kid sat down next to Jun and said, bribery is money paid in advance and then accepting favors from people. Giving bribes will be considered as a thank you gift. Jun pretended to be innocent again. He was not a government official and she did not need his help. The hip-hop guy laughed. Do I have to bribe you before asking for a favor? What if someone wants to reserve a spot for a few years later? He confidently said, I will become a prosecutor in a few years, so you have to bribe me to let you out. Jun looked at the hip-hop guy as if he was an alien and then he suddenly smiled mysteriously without saying anything. The hip-hop guy asked, did you learn this trick from your grandfather? But Jun answered, no, I am the youngest grandson in the family, so my grandfather did not teach me anything. He only taught the children of my uncles. The hip-hop guy sympathized with Jun and asked, so you are like an outsider in the Sunyang group? Jun sadly said, you could say that. My father, the youngest son of the chairman, was also marginalized early on. That's why he went to make movies. Hearing Jun say that made the hip-hop guy feel sorry for him. He asked, so you only have the label of being a third-generation chaebol? Jun nodded and said, you could say that. At this point, the two of them sat on the bench and looked at each other deeply as if they were about to confess their love. Hip-Hop scratched his head and said to Do-Jun, "You are so cunning." Do-Jun thought this kid was funny and wanted to see what he would do next. Suddenly, Hip-Hop asked, "Hey, can you give me your laptop now?" It was too late for lunch, which made Do-Jun very amused. People who did not want to accept would not become enemies. He looked at Hip-Hop and thought he did not look his age. So Do-Jun asked, "You failed 3 times, right?" Being asked about his age made the Hip-Hop guy annoyed. "Are you saying I'm old? You are touching my sore spot." Do-Jun quickly appeased him with material things. "Then I'll give you my laptop as an apology." At this moment, the Hip-Hop guy dusted himself off and stood up and said, "Let's do it next time." He turned his head and said, "This is the first time, so I'll forgive you." Do-Jun knew that he really did not want to accept it, but he was about to give it to him when he suddenly left. Do-Jun quickly called out, "You have to answer me before you go. How old are you?" The Hip-Hop guy did not turn his head back but just raised his middle finger and told Do-Jun to shut up. The next day in the lecture hall, many students were rushing into class. A female student was sitting and talking with her glasses-wearing friend. Do-Jun asked his friend, "Is the glasses girl next to her Seminjin?" His friend answered, "Yes, she's pretty, right?" Seminjin started to stroke her hair and ears as if she knew someone was looking at her and wanted to act cute. But Do-Jun thought she was too pretty and could only be silent. His glasses-wearing friend reminded him, "But don't touch her." Do-Jun was confused, but he immediately frowned and said, "We have to have a chance with Seminjin too. If you are a third-generation chaebol, then dating an artist is fine." Do-Jun heard that and laughed loudly. "Don't say such nonsense anymore. I don't think I saw her at the welcome party." The glasses-wearing guy explained, "She just came to show up and then left. Everyone was crazy when you gave away your laptop. She had already disappeared by then." Do-Jun heard that and smiled wickedly like those rich old men. He then propped his hand on the desk and stood up, instead of standing up normally. Because he was rich, Do-Jun walked away, ignoring his glasses-wearing friend behind him who kept calling him. At this time, Seminjin was doing her homework while acting cute, unlike normal people who do homework. How could she smile like that with a crazy head? At this time, Do-Jun had arrived next to Seminjin's seat. Sammy-in looked up and saw the rich guy suddenly standing next to her. She then made a beautiful and innocent face to charm the heir of the wealthy family. Sure enough, Do-Jun was speechless when he saw such a beautiful girl. He was rich and horny. Seminjin spoke first. "Do you need something from me?" Do-Jun looked at her expression and guessed that she probably knew who he was. He said, "I'm curious about something about you." Sammy John didn't know what this guy was curious about besides her beauty. Do-Jun continued, "At the welcome party for new students, you didn't take the laptop that I gave you. Can I ask why?" Hearing this, Seminjin quickly covered her mouth and smiled sweetly. She was really different from the other guys in this story who only smiled with their mouths wide open. She smiled and said, "Because I don't know how to use it." Do-Jun was dumbfounded. Seminjin continued, "I'm a computer illiterate. Why would I accept something that I don't know how to use?" Do-Jun was bewildered. Who would refuse a laptop from a beautiful girl for this reason? At this time, Seminjin started to play the role of a beautiful girl. She said, "Don't stare at me like that. A handsome guy like you staring at me like that will make me fall for you." Do-Jun heard the beautiful girl compliment him and his heart fluttered. He swallowed his saliva and couldn't say a word. At the chairman's house, an old woman who looked like Mrs. Mai was reporting that the family of the chief judge had passed away last year. "This is his granddaughter." The chairman replied, "The daughter of that family had declared that she would not practice law after finishing her term as a judge." Mrs. Mai clapped her hands and continued, "Yes, the place where they gather is the Supreme Court and the prosecutor's office. You can call them a prestigious legal family that is respected." The chairman asked again, "What about that girl?" Mrs. Mai flattered her, "She is really a rare gem that is hard to find someone like her. She also enrolled in the law school of S University." The chairman was confused when Mrs. Mai said, "Yes, she is in the same department as your grandson. They can get to know each other naturally." Nowadays, young heirs hate blind dates in cafes or hotels. They will proceed smoothly without anyone noticing that they are arranged as if they are really dating. When the chairman asked if the other family had that idea, Mrs. Mai answered, "Of course they do. Who would refuse to be the daughter-in-law of Sun Yen Group?" The chairman smiled smugly like a pervert while looking for a wife for his grandson. "Very good, go ahead." On the table was a profile of the beautiful girl Seminjin from earlier. At the Sun Yen skyscraper, a question rang out, "Are you going on a blind date tomorrow, uncle?" The vice chairman was still casual as if he was buying something at the market. "That's right, tomorrow noon and tomorrow night, and in between then go for tea." His son was surprised and asked, "Why 3 blind dates in one day?" The uncle still answered irritably, "That's right, before getting married you have to see each other's faces." No matter who he chose, it would benefit his son. His son heard that and was annoyed. "Is that your order?" The uncle replied, "I have chosen those 3 people and your father agrees with them. The daughter of the director of the bank." The son rubbed his head tiredly and said, "Anyway, it's a bit too much. It's not like finding a mate to breed with. If you say decide in one day then it's a bit." He started to get annoyed again. "Nonsense, I already told you. Before getting married, you only look at each other's faces. After living together, you build the feelings later." The son clenched his teeth and cursed silently. "Damn it. There is no other way. A marriage that I can't choose for myself is not living with the person I love, but living with the person who is necessary to become the chairman of Sun Yen Group." The son still asked, "But why does father like Dao Bank so much?" The father answered, "If your grandfather is still alive, how long do you think he will live? If he dies, do you think your uncles will leave him alone? They will bite and rush to grab some subsidiaries to prepare for that time. So from now on, we have to ensure that we have more shares than them. But if we do that, it will cost a lot of money." The son sneered, "So people are not looking for a daughter-in-law, but looking for a collateral that is necessary for a large loan." The father started to get angry. "Anyway, the best choice for yourself is also to get married. And do you know who is the best wife in everyone's eyes? I'm a teacher. Because she is a civil servant, she has a high pension. When she retires, she will receive a pension and also have summer vacation. Isn't that great? Men like to choose teachers to have a more comfortable life. Everything is calculated in advance. But isn't father fond of the director's daughter of the bank?" Hearing his son ask, the father had to answer, "What's wrong with that? If we take over the whole Sun Yen Group, where do you think it will go? Everything will go into your pocket." At this time, the son was a bit challenging. "Just like father, I also have a younger brother." The father smiled. "Then at that time, your brother can also marry the director's daughter of the bank." After talking about money, the 2 fathers and sons fell into silence and no one said anything. At the university, a teacher said, "I'm thinking about whether to replace this semester's assignment with a new method or not. The assignment is to give out some controversial events that have social implications and are especially opposed to constitutional values. Dig deeper into those events and come up with new perspectives. The deadline is until the end of the semester." After hearing the assignment, Du Jun thought, this method can be applied to senior students, but it is too heavy for freshmen. The teacher continued, "The freshmen will find it very difficult to do it alone, so please divide into groups of 5 to do it. There's a list of groups on the last page, so please find your own group." The class started and Du Jun was confused. Did he already have a group member? Suddenly he saw the name of his group member and froze for about 5 seconds. In the list of groups, there was one name that was very impressive. At this time, there was a girl looking at Doo-jun. Oh, it was Seminjin. She must have become the heroine of the story by now. Doo-jun noticed that there was a beautiful girl looking at him and swallowed again. In the car, Doo-jun gave his assistant a piece of paper and told him to investigate these two people for him. The assistant asked back, should I entrust this to the information team of the group or just listen to this? Doo-jun asked, can you investigate by yourself? The assistant answered, if I only need to grasp some basic information, I can do it. Doo-jun was relieved. Then please do that. The assistant was puzzled and waited for him to say more, but he didn't say anything. He asked if he needed to leave out the report of the department head. This time Doo-jun was confused. Was he testing me or trying to show his loyalty to me? The assistant judged by himself. There is no need to ask me every single thing. The assistant just agreed and then did it himself. Asking this guy was useless anyway. At this time, the chairman was asking someone on the phone. What happened to Chairman Hong? How many days did he have the meeting? At this moment, the voice on the other end was Ko Tich Hong of Hansung newspaper. He respectfully congratulated the chairman on the steel purchase deal this time. Then the chairman on this side pretended to be modest. He said, how can I receive such congratulations from the chairman? All these tasks were done by the vice chairman and Young Chun, the chairman on the other side said. He said he heard that he had studied business abroad for a while and now he was in charge of such a big project. Then he called the chairman as if he remembered something. The chairman asked what it was. He said, there are some strange stories lately. Suddenly, all the news piled up around Azin's car, which was exactly like 6 years ago. The chairman frowned. He thought, if it's like 6 years ago, then now, his face became angrier and angrier. He slammed his teacup on the table. The water splashed everywhere. He shouted into the phone. Is there someone targeting Azin's car again? The chairman of Bao was scared. He replied, I'm not sure, but the current situation, the chairman on the other side asked again. He said, Hansun newspaper is also preparing to publish this news now. The chairman of Bao answered, I have temporarily stopped receiving applications, but anyway, it's better to check it personally by the director. Hearing this, the chairman became even more angry. His old face wrinkles. He yelled, is anyone outside? Bring me a bottle of filtered water. A maid came in trembling with a glass of water. She didn't dare to say anything. The chairman scolded her for not understanding him. He said, what did I say? Not a glass, but a bottle. A bottle of filtered water. Then he angrily squeezed the bottle of water and drank it. He drank a whole big bottle of water in one breath. He was old, but he drank so fiercely. He threw away the bottle of water at the maid who was standing there trembling. Then he picked up the phone again and said, Chairman Hong, can you postpone publishing the article? Chairman Bao replied, of course. At this moment, the chairman started this thing before he got married. I already asked him for a favor through his family. It's really shameless. Chairman Bao also pretended to be modest. He said, Chairman is too polite. It's a matter of course. Then he asked Chairman Hong to help him find out where the source of the news came from. Chairman Hong pretended to be very troubled and said, the reporters will have to sweat a little bit. He hung up the phone and smiled very cunningly. He thought to himself, if I pull Dihin Group's leg and help Chairman Jean, I can also help my niece become Sun Yen Group's daughter-in-law. At this time, the sun was shining outside Sihun's building. Sihun was tired and pushed the door open. Before he could catch his breath, he heard someone ask him, Uncle, is there any rumor about Johnny or Achimoto? I turned around and saw the rich guy Doo-jun who was leisurely asking above. Since he was holding a box of baby milk, Sihun asked the kid, are you not going to school? How come you are working before me? But Du Jun replied, don't you read the news? The country is in turmoil. I don't have time to go to school and read law books. Then Si-hoon continued, what's wrong? Are you worried about the Southeast Asian currency crisis? Or are you planning to take advantage of this opportunity to sweep the Southeast Asian currencies with the dollars you have accumulated when you were in the US? Du Jun innocently said, no, why would I do that? Si-hoon started to think, so you are also troubled by the currency crisis, huh? Du Jun smiled wickedly at this moment. Should I give him a hint? I wonder how he will react. Thinking so, Du Jun said, Southeast Asia is nothing but hell, and by April in Korea, for major conglomerates have collapsed. But we still praise ourselves as the 4 dragons of Asia. When Si-hoon still didn't understand anything, Du Jun continued, it's not bad to prepare for the storm in advance. Si-hoon asked irritably, is there definitely going to be a storm? But Du Jun calmly answered, you are feeling uneasy right now too. Du Jun judged that Si-hoon was someone who always followed the financial flow of the world. There was no way he didn't know the point of the storm. Si-hoon pondered and said, there is a rumor that Dihin is targeting Achimoto, and Achimoto is out of the capital now. If a few powerful people gather and strangle them, they will die immediately. Du Jun secretly thought, fortunately, history hasn't changed. Although history hasn't changed because his attempt to buy Achimoto 6 years ago was stopped. But now 6 years have passed and he had to change history. Du Jun maliciously asked Si-hoon, should we eat Achimoto too? Oxywander was shocked by his face. He didn't expect this kid to be so cruel and cunning. Dae-jun began to calculate. The history of Dihin Group buying Achimoto would be changed to the history of a foreign company named Fantasy Investment buying Achimoto. At this time, a meeting was taking place at Sunyen Group. The chairman was saying that the strategy we created 6 years ago was used exactly by the chairman of Dihin Group. The staff members were silent and didn't dare to say anything loud or quiet. The chairman became more angry. We desperately wanted hand of steel and we got it in our hands. But we didn't have money, so we couldn't buy Achimoto. All of this was part of the picture drawn by Chairman Chu of Dihin Group. Well, it's like this now, there's no other way. What will happen to us if Dihin takes over Achi? The chairman asked the crowd. At this time, the director of Sunyen Automobiles, Mr. Chu Jiho answered, the market share will drop quickly. The chairman glanced at him and called out a word. Chu Jiho was scared and quickly said yes like a puppy. The chairman said, make a plan. The deadline is before this time tomorrow. The director was reluctant but still replied, I understand, sir. At that moment, the chairman dismissed everyone. Get out of here, all of you. How can you stand being scolded by me all the time? So they hurriedly left. The secretary saw the chairman was very angry and was afraid of being scolded too, so he sat quietly and did not dare to speak. Then the secretary asked the chairman, do we need to quickly sell the 7% stake in Achimoto that we bought under someone else's name? The chairman answered, don't you have the determination to fight to the end? The secretary said, if Dihin Group takes over Achimoto, bankruptcy is inevitable. The chairman asked, why? Because the plan that Dihin Group is using is the plan that we created 6 years ago. If it weren't for the corruption case, we would have acquired Achimoto already. The chairman clenched his teeth and remembered. That was a perfect plan. Can we take advantage of that stock or not? We can't just sit still like this. He asked. The secretary replied, but those shares are scattered everywhere. To gather them all together, we need someone to stand out. At that moment, the chairman smiled cunningly. There's a very suitable person for that, Si-hoon. The secretary couldn't believe that the chairman was so scheming. The chairman continued, let's throw away the shares in Achimoto that we bought under someone else's name and let him be our representative. We also have a black fund entrusted to us. This is an opportunity to get it back. The secretary was shocked. You want to exchange the 100 billion won black fund in fantasy for 7% of Hachimoto's shares? The chairman's reflexes are still not dead, huh? The next morning at Sehun's house, he said, you just met Lee Hatch's head of department. Your grandfather must be very angry. Sehun said to Do-jun. Do-jun replied, because of DN Group, right? That's right. The chairman has 7% of Hachimoto's shares and intends to use them to shake up the situation. He wants you to stand out as the chairman. We still have a 100 billion won black fund in fantasy. He said, buy shares with that money and demand rights. Do-jun asked. Of course you refused, right? There is no reason to buy shares that are falling sharply. Do-jun said and thought. I can read his thoughts. He is not someone who will bring up something he has refused and end it again. But it seems like you have something to say. Do-jun asked his uncle Sehun, who suddenly became serious. He asked Do-jun if he really wanted to have Hachimoto. Do-jun answered seriously, yes, please. Sehun continued, this is a big group with a revenue of 14 trillion won. If you buy back the parent company Hachimoto, it means you will buy back Hachimoto Group. Suppose it's just a hypothesis. Sehun asked seriously, if you buy back Hachimoto, what do you think? Do-jun asked him back, what do you want me to do? Sehun said seriously, if you think rationally, you have to reorganize 28 subsidiaries.